See, many men by nature are fixers, right? We may not be the greatest communicators, but we're problem solvers. We like to fix things. It's just the way God has built us. But within us fixing things and being problem solvers doesn't mean that we want to be out in the forefront, especially when things have a potential to possibly go wrong or possibly go sideways or possibly go south, right? Because that's when we don't want to give account. It comes to accountability. We have to be accountable for the things that we say. We have to be accountable for the things that we teach. We have to be accountable for those that we lead. We have to be accountable. A lot of men don't want to be accountable for their actions. Oh, they enjoy the praise. They enjoy the accolades. They enjoy the acknowledgement. But when it comes to a standard being set, we don't want to be accountable for a standard. We just want to be able to get in and get out. We just want to be able to, solve the problem and then exit stage left. But see, what happens is there's a standard that's set. And once that standard is set, we're accountable to that standard. And we don't want to be accountable. It's funny how I find that, a lot of men, they enjoy the acknowledgement, right? They enjoy the praise. They enjoy the thankfulness that they receive for doing a good job, for accomplishing something, for making something happen. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like something that is put on men, that we need to make things happen. When ain't nobody else making anything happen, we need to make it happen. We need to make sure that things go the way they're supposed to go. Things that they get completed. And when they get completed, they get done and completed totally, right? A lot of us don't like to backtrack. When we do things, we like to do things once. We like to do things right the first time, so we don't have to go back and do it again and do it again and do it again. You know what I'm saying? I can remember when my dad was teaching me certain things, and instead of me listening to what he was saying, I would half-hearted listen or be paying attention. And then I'd come back and say, okay, Pop, I'm done. And then when he'd go and check it out, he'd say, hey, man, come here. And then he would point out some things. He'd say, did you listen to what I was telling you? See, because if you'd have listened, you wouldn't have did this. Now do it again. And I'd be like, oh, man, come on. And then go back to him again. All right, Pop, I'm done. Now he ain't even coming out to look. He just questioning. Hey, did you remember to do this? Or did you do it like that? Go do it again. That's the last thing we want as men, to have to do things over and over and over. We want to get it done right the first time, right? So in the praise that we like to receive, in the acknowledgement that we like to receive, in the kudos, in the adorations that we like to receive, we have to remember that there's also an accountability that comes with that. And a lot of us don't want the accountability that comes with the accolades. Let's talk about it. But before we do that, please make sure that you like this video, that you subscribe to the channel. It'll help YouTube to know that you're interested in the video, and they will put out more videos right like this to a wider range of audience. And also make sure that you hit that bell notification so you're always notified whenever I upload content. I greatly appreciate it. Now let's get back to the message. The problem comes in when we don't do it his way. God clearly gave us instructions, clearly told us what he expected, what he required. And because we don't want that to get out, right? We don't want that to be known So therefore, we cut corners. Therefore, we try to do it our own way, in our own strength, and our own power, according to how we see it in our own mind. And then it'll get messed up. It'll fall. It'll filter. It'll fail. Right? We got to give account for that. But when we do things the right way and according to his standard and not our own, when we do things according to how he has instructed us, and we don't look at somebody else and say, well, they ain't doing it like that. We don't look at, others as a standard, but we look at God and what he told us, you and me, as the standard. Then we should be able to stand 10 toes down and be proud of the work that we're putting out. Be proud of what we're doing with our hands. Be proud of what we're saying with our mouths. Be proud of anything that God has called us to do, because it's not our standard. It's his. So I want to read the scripture into your hearing. It's going to be coming out of the book of Matthew, Dick. The 5th chapter, and it's going to be the 16th verse, Matthew 5 and 16. And it simply says this: let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Let your work, whatever it is that God has called you to do, let it not just shine, but let it so shine in such a way, right, that those men may see it. Whatever it is that you've been called to do, whatever it is God has chosen you to do, whatever it is that he's asked for you to do it in such a way to where it not just shines, it not just, stands out, it not just becomes the standard, but let it so shine. Let it be spoken of in such great, adoration, and such, let it be looked upon as, this is such a great thing. It's going to bless so many people. Oh my God, I can't believe that you actually did this, right? Let it so shine. Let your light, the light that's in you, what God has given you, let it so shine. This is where we ought to be proud. We ought to have our chest poked out, right? We ought to take it very serious when God has given us an assignment, not to pass the buck, not to act like it's not that big of a deal, but let whatever God has called us to do, let it so shine that it's bright, it's blinding, it's to where it's like, oh, you know what I'm saying? That men can see it. Not that you do something and then you tuck it away in a corner because you don't want nobody to know. You don't want nobody to really analyze. You don't want nobody to really examine that thing. You don't want nobody to really put a magnifying glass on it and really, dissect that thing. God didn't give you your light for you to put it under a bushel, put it under a closet, or put it under a box, or put it somewhere where no one can see it. No, he gave it to you that you would do whatever it is he's giving you to the best of your ability. Why? So that men would see it. That's the purpose of the assignment. The purpose that God gave you an assignment is so that other men can see it. It can so shine that it can see it. And when men see the work that you have done, how God has blessed your hands to be able to do this thing, or speak this thing, or build this thing, then when men see it, they're not going to glorify you. They're going to glorify God. That should be our desire, that God is glorified behind everything that we do. Because men will be quick to give you praise, to give you adoration, to give you accolades, right? To lift you up. And that's when we ought to say, all glory goes to God. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Thank you, sister. I appreciate that. But to God be the glory. And then they turn around and they glorify God for our good works. The good works that they've seen. Not the good works that they've heard about. Not the good works that somebody else has shared of what you've done. That's great when someone shares and say, hey, did you see so-and-so? Yeah, they built this, or they did that, or they helped this one, or they gave over here. They gave their time, their talent, their treasure, or they spoke a good word. It was a timely word. It was an on time. I needed to hear that word. That's all fine and great. But when men see what you've done, when they take notice of your accomplishment, then they can glorify God, because what you done helped them. What you done, it instructed them. What you done brought clarity to them. What you've done was a great help in some shape, form, or fashion, whether it was to the family, to the children, to them specifically. And then they'll glorify God because they've actually seen the work. They've seen you working. They seen how you didn't quit, how you didn't give up, how you had an I can do attitude, even when people were coming against you. Even when the enemy was throwing the kitchen sink at you to try to stop you. Even when people were doubting you and they were laughing and mocking and joking and talking about how, you're not going to be able to complete this. How it's taking you so long to do that. How if you'd have did it this way, it might have turned out like this, or you might have been done a whole, year ago. But however long it takes, let your light so shine. What you're doing, the assignment that has been given to you, you're not doing it according to man. You're not doing it according to man's timing, according to their instruction, according to what they think and what they perceive. You're doing it unto the Lord. So however quick you may do it, or however long it may take you to do it, do it. Don't give up. Don't give in, right? Don't throw in the towel. Don't get tired. Don't get discouraged. But let your light so shine so that men can see it. It's not nothing that we're ashamed of. It's not nothing that we're hiding. It's not nothing that we're tucking in the corner. But let it so shine that it can be seen to where it can help somebody. It can be seen to where it can guide them out of the darkness, out of the valley of the shadows of darkness. It can be a guiding light that they can see on the hill that can't be hid, right? Let it be seen. Let your works be seen so that God can get the glory. That's the whole point of him giving us assignments. He desires to get the glory out of you and me, out of the words that we speak, out of what we do with our hands, out of our giving, out of our loving, out of our kindness, out of our willingness to be a help, right? He desires to get the glory. That's why we were given the assignment. And he can't get the glory if we're hiding what he's told us to do. If we are cutting corners on how he told us to do it. If we're not putting it out there so that men can see it, how can they glorify God if they don't see it? Setting the standard. Yeah, we don't have a problem with setting the standard, but a lot of times we don't want to be accountable for that standard, right? We just want to be able to get in and get out. We want to be able to set the standard, say, look, this is what it is. This is what it needs to be. And then we want to jet and go on about our business. And then expect that that standard is to be set. That standard is the way it's going to go for everybody that's going to come behind us. But what about the accountability, right? What about being accountable, raising your hand and say, oh yeah, I did that. Oh yeah, I made that, or I said that, or whatever it may happen to be, I built that, right? We don't like to give an account. We don't want to be accountable. We don't want to be held to the standard that we set a lot of times, especially when it comes to the things of God. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to worldly stuff, we don't mind, putting it out there. We don't mind, raising our hand and cracking a smile and shaking hands and rubbing elbows with folks, right? But when it comes to the things of God, now we know that there's a different accountability that comes with it. And a lot of times we don't want to be out in the front, out in the forefront. We want to play the background. And sometimes I wonder, why is it that we as men, we don't want to give an account when it comes to the things of God, right? And I think it's because when it comes to worldly things, we can always point the finger at something or somebody. We can always pass the buck. You know what I'm saying? We can always find a scapegoat. But when it comes to godly things, we are reluctant to give an account. We're reluctant to keep a standard because we know that once a standard has been set in the kingdom of God, that we have to give an account unto God, not to man, but unto God for that standard. And that's why I think a lot of men choose to just stay in the background. They don't want to be out in the forefront, right? Because now you're accountable. And you're just not accountable to the pastor, to the bishop, or to the congregation. But now you're accountable to God. And there's no escaping that. There's no running away from that. I don't care where you go. I don't care how low you try to dig, how high you try to go. There's no escaping God's accountability. But we shouldn't shun that, right? We ought to be proud of what we do for the kingdom. We ought to be proud that God chose us to do certain things, that God chose us to speak certain things, that God chose us to, set a standard for others to come behind us and keep. And if not keep it, raise the bar even more. But no matter how high the bar is raised, this is the standard. And we ought to be proud of that. That's something that we ought to be able to smile about, something that we ought to be able to, take pride in, that God found us worthy and chose us to do this particular thing, whatever it may be. And that we know that we have set a standard according to what he's given us. And therefore we can take an account for that. Don't have a problem with somebody saying, hey, why did you do it this way? Why didn't you do it that way? Because God had a standard and I met that standard. And because he said, do it this way. And he said, do it like this and do it at this time and do it, according to the standard that he set and he gave it to me to do, I will take full accountability for it. A lot of times as men, we don't want to do that when it comes to the things of God, because we know that there's a higher requirement, right? And do we want to, meet that requirement every time? No, not every time. Sometimes we get lazy. Sometimes we don't feel like it. Sometimes we think maybe we did too much in the beginning. Maybe we set the standard too high. And now we're being held accountable to do that each and every time without fail. Can't take no shortcuts. Ain't no grading on the curve. This is the standard, and this is how it has to be done, and this is how it's expected to be met each and every time. And I think that's a lot of times what we run from as men when it comes to the kingdom and doing things for God. We don't want to meet the standard that God had us set because there's no one to blame. There's no one to point the finger at. There's no scapegoat. We're it. So we have to make sure that we are setting the standard according to God's standard. And if we do that, then there should be no shame. There should be no guilt. There should be no condemnation, because we know we did it His way. I just want to come on today and just encourage you, men and women, right? I'm including women in this too, but I'm predominantly talking to the men, because we are the fixers. We are the ones that like to get things done. We're the ones that like to, make things happen. So men, don't be ashamed of the assignment that God has given you. Don't be ashamed of the work, right? But be confident in the work. Take pride in the work. So that way, when you set the standard, you can be accountable to that standard. And then God can be glorified, because men will be able to see what we've done. Not just hear about it. Not just, hear someone talk about it, but they'll be able to see the work that you and I have put out for the kingdom. And then God can be glorified. You dig? Be blessed on today. This is your man, LaVon. Remember, Lameli E, love, uplift, motivate, to inspire, learn, laugh, encourage, and delight. That is my mandate, and that is this channel's purpose. And I pray that you like this video, share this video on all your platforms. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell notification so you're always notified whenever I upload content. And I'll see you in the next video. I'm out.